Welcome to The Spotlight, the podcast where veterans and military spouses connect and share how their military experience has transformed their lives and their businesses. Here's your host, Bob Louthen.
Hey, this is your host, Bob Louthen, founder of the VeteranCrowd Network, the network that brings veterans and veteran-led businesses together with each other and the resources they need to prosper. And you are tuning into The Spotlight.
Hey, welcome everybody. This is Bob Louthen, host of the Spotlight on the VeteranCrowd Network. We're going to be talking a book today. I actually got an advanced copy of it, which is probably not going to show up because of this thing. But this book called Rogue Asset. Is he Webb Griffin or does he go W.E.B. Griffin? I had to ask that question before.
It's both, I think.
Okay, well, you guys have got a new book coming out on December the 7th. Very interesting and intriguing story. I'm into it, and we're going to be talking about that. But welcome to the program. Thank you for stepping into the spotlight.
Hey, glad to be here, man. Thanks for having us, Bob.
So Jeff and Brian, you guys have written a bunch of books together. I've been to your website and gosh, you are pretty prolific. How did this happen and when did you guys meet and connect? Because some of you've written a couple of books each individually. So how did you guys come to meet one another?
Yeah, we actually were writers when we met. We didn't know each other in the service. We're both Navy veterans, but didn't meet until we were writers. We were actually debut authors the same year. There's an organization called International Thriller Writers, which we credit, just a little plug, we credit the success of our careers to that organization and the people that we met there. But one of the people I met there was Brian. So the year that we were both debut authors, I have a little bit of a social dysfunction. Don't like to do the cocktail party and, schmooze and all that. So just
the grip and grin, huh?
Yeah. I don't mind chatting with people, but pretending to be interested is not my long suit. So I've told this story before, but my wife will tell you, we're sitting in the hotel room in New York City and I'm flipping through the catalog, right, of all the people that are there. And I'm trying to memorize the faces of anybody that's a military veteran. I'm thinking, okay, these are dudes I can talk to, right? And I had maybe a dozen of them because there's a lot of people in this space now. And Brian was one of them, and he was Navy. And so the first night we go to this welcome reception to this cocktail party, and I see Brian almost immediately because, he's a submariner. So he's sitting by himself in the corner, and there's a tear kind of streaming down, and his head is down, and he's kind of looking around, and out of
you felt sorry for him,
right? Exactly. The magnanimous self that I am, I went over to try to befriend this friendless man. No, all kidding aside, the first part of that story is true. I was looking for other people I could connect with. I saw Brian and we hit it off immediately. We had kids the same age. We're both very, very family focused people, family before anything. We share a similar faith and we just became instant friends. And so the friendship started there. And it was a couple years later before we decided to write. How long was it? Like 2 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll let you tell that part.
Brian, the story is so much better than, our eyes met from across the room and we just knew.
I know the lonely submarine officer being stalked by the guy, Navy special warfare, combat surgeon, it does have that special ring to it, I think.
Harlequin. It has a Harlequin ring.
Did he have like the John Wayne walk and the hair gel and all the other stuff that the Navy SEALs have?
I had just sent Lee Child away to fetch me a drink, if I remember. And no, but the thing is, I think what you need to understand about ITW, the International Thriller Writers Organization, is it is a very fraternal organization. And I think we gravitated to it, independently. We found our way to this conference. And the reason why is because this organization is all about, bringing knowledge to bear and sharing lessons learned and helping lift each other up. And so this is an organization where thriller writers help other thriller writers to get agents and network and learn about the industry and hone their craft. And so it really resonated with our sort of Navy ethos, military ethos of, hey, teamwork, collaboration, mission before self. And so, like Jeff said, we just gravitated towards each other. We had the same values, but we also had a lot of the same goals, which is, how do we transition from the jobs that we were doing? We were each doing, he was doing medicine, I was doing some entrepreneurial stuff. How do we transition to, a life as a paid storyteller? How do we become published authors and do this for a living? And it is a difficult road with lots of doors that can get slammed in your face, lots of no's. They say getting your book published, by one of the big publishers is harder than getting into Harvard. And I think that statistic is probably true. So it's tough to do by yourself. And so I think for me personally, this idea of collaborating with Jeff and pooling our knowledge and resources was very appealing from the beginning.
No, I can tell you from reading the first part of the Rogue Asset book, which, comes out in another week, that you guys are good at it. Okay. And you're able to make a living out of it. You're doing this full time, right?
That's right. Yeah. Between the two of us, we're one good writer.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's our motto.
Hey, it's kind of like, hey, two writers can live as cheaply as one for half as long, right, guys?
That's about right.
There we go. You guys have a number of series. There's one called Tier 1, Sons of Valor, Dark Intercept. This Webb Griffin series is this is your first book in that series, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have one called Beijing Red. Is that right? Yeah. How are they all kind of interrelated? Is there a theme, or are they just all diametrically different?
I think there's a lot of differences between the series, but the theme that it sort of unifies them all, and this was very intentional on our part from the very beginning of our collaboration, is that we wanted to write stories that are exciting and entertaining. Of course, every writer wants to do that, but we wanted to make sure that we were honoring the men and the women that we have served with in the past, the men and the women that are still out there on the pointy tip of the spear, and not write those trite superhero, Superman characters. We wanted to show the teamwork. We wanted to show the sacrifice. We wanted to show some of the toll that these jobs can have on not just the operators, but also on families. And so we set out from the very beginning saying, look, we want to write books that we can give this story to our former teammates and have them go, yeah, right on. You captured it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Obviously, it's a story, it's fiction, it's entertainment. We're not going to have the 4 days in a row going to the KBR for breakfast because there's nothing to do. We can't have that stuff in there because that's not exciting. But in terms of the characters and their relationships, we really wanted to honor the people that we've had the honor of serving with.
You spent time with the SEAL teams, and Brian, you've been a submariner. There's so many things I can drill down on, but Tom Clancy wrote all like the submarine based stuff, right? Have you guys written a submarine book yet?
That was our intention when we originally sort of came up with this. We were going to do like SEALs and subs. But what you find is in these stories is your heroes have to have agency, right? And it's kind of tough to work a lot of agency into a giant command, right? So this, that's why in these action series, a lot of times you're dealing with spies and operators and the like, simply because they're empowered to take action in the field without having to.
Yeah, the Navy SEAL's not really going off on his own, right? He's, right.
Yeah. So, but that's a long way of getting back to your question, which is, yes, we are going to work some submarine activity into the Tier 1 series. We're excited to do that. We just have to find the right place for it.
Hollywood takes all the submariners, I'm told is the right way to say it, right? Takes all these submariners, and there's always this guy that's breaking the rules, in order to be the hero in the submarine movie, which would probably get you keel hauled in reality, right, Brian?
Oh yeah, you did. It's not a rule breaking community.
Your path to the surface would be through the torpedo tube, I think.
Yeah, I think because you're dealing with a nuclear reactor and nuclear weapons, they don't like the idea of rogue decision makers. That's never really factored into the training program. So
right. You got $1 billion asset. You want a team player.
Has anybody approached you guys yet to take any of this stuff and maybe, talk about screenplay, take one of these heroes have I touched a nerve, or is there super secret? Am I going to break the news here on the Veteran Crowd Network?
So we wish that we had more that we could discuss publicly. We can say that our the Shepherd series, the first book, The Dark Intercept, has been optioned for television, and we're excited that that seems to be moving along towards production. Very excited to be able to share more news about that. And then we have several other things that are just too darn early to discuss.
You could tell me, but you'd have to kill me and we wouldn't be able to publish it. All right, I got it. Hey, you called it the Shepherd series. Dark Intercept has a faith-based theme to it. Tell me about that.
One of the things a question we got asked a lot when that book came out was, why the pivot? Why would you switch and move off in this other direction? And I think Brian and I were both taken a little aback by that. Not that it was an insulting question, but that we didn't view it that way. Like when we decided that we had been brainstorming this idea for some time before it literally, the opportunity sort of fell from the sky, so to speak, and we were able to publish it with Tyndale. But I don't think either of us ever viewed it as a big pivot. We write very character-driven stories. It's the plots are obviously in any high concept thriller, they're very important, but we really do it through the lens of the characters and the relationships and the arcs. And so, to us, questions about the universe, questions about why am I here? Is there a God? What does he do in my life? All those sorts of things are so universal in the human condition that to pull that thread through a thriller didn't really seem outrageous to us. It seemed like just one more layer, if you will, on what we were already doing, talking about, loss, talking about how you deal with regret, talking about questions with faith. They all seem the same. They're layers in the human condition. And so the Shepherd series is very much an Andrews and Wilson action thriller series with this faith-based thread that we hope at the end of each book, people go, oh, that's something I'm going to think about after I close the page. But beyond that, I didn't feel like it was a huge departure. Brian, I don't want to speak for you. I think that's right, isn't it?
Oh, I agree. And I think that we were honored and maybe even a little surprised when, Tyndale reached out to us, because they're recognizing that, hey, we have a readership that's wanting to have, adventure fiction. They're like Jeff, Jeff said this in a previous interview, like, just because I'm, a Christian, I go to church, doesn't mean I'm not going to see the next Jason Bourne movie, right? So, we felt like this is a great opportunity for us to maybe speak to, or at least engage a readership that wasn't, familiar with our books. So, these types of questions, spiritual purpose, faith, why am I serving, and how does that dovetail with my faith? These are things that every operator, every serviceman or woman thinks about. Why not put it on the page?
Honor, duty, service. At the Veteran Crowd Network, we're focused on our next mission, bringing veterans, veteran-operated businesses, and veteran service organizations together with each other and the resources they need to prosper. That's why we are launching the Veteran Crowd Rewards Program, exclusively for our individual and corporate members. Now you can save on travel, restaurants, goods, and services from brands you trust online and at over 900,000 locations nationwide. Find out more today at VeteranCrowdNetwork.com. If you are a veteran-operated business, or a VSO, consider the connections, the network, the benefits, the engagement, and success of working with other veterans again. The Veteran Crowd Network, you paid a lot of dues to join this club.
Hey, you're listening to the Spotlight on the Veteran Crowd Network. Our guests today, Brian Andrews and Jeff Wilson, authors. Guys, how did you end up going into the Navy? Let's take a step back for a second. If you could go back and talk to that 18-year-old Jeff Wilson, what were you thinking back then, and how'd you end up in the Navy?
So I will tell you, and it sounds a little corny, but I come from a family where service is just valued. And, my role models, my dad and I are still this day, he's 83 years old. He's still my superhero. I admire everything about that man. And service to your family, service to your community, service to your nation. These are things I was taught from very young. I have an uncle who was a Marine, and my dad who served in the Air Force and later in other capacities for our country. It just was not something that I thought about. And when I first graduated from high school, I was actually a firefighter paramedic, and that was driven by a desire to serve. There, I was serving my community. And once I had done any form of service, I just couldn't imagine not doing that. And so when I first went into the Navy, you and I spoke offline about your son, and I know how proud you are of him. My dream was to walk in my father's footsteps and become a fighter pilot like he had been. And so I went through that process of becoming a fighter pilot and was in an accident very, very early in the process, and a motorcycle accident in 1986 when they were not looking for. They had more people in the pipeline than they needed, and so I didn't have the opportunity to continue. I could have stayed in the Navy, but not as a pilot. So I got out and I was flying civilian. I was flying corporate jets. I was doing really fun stuff. And it just didn't have that sense of purpose that I was looking for. I mean, it was a fun jet to fly, but at the end, getting those guys to their golf game, as nice as they were, you didn't feel like you made the world a better place. And so I decided to pivot again, and I went and served in another part of the federal government for a few years. Again, just driven by a desire to serve and for excitement and adventure, of course. I'm a young man. And then that was a rather violent life that wasn't like I had imagined it would be. So from there, I pivoted again to medical school. But even when I went to medical school to become a surgeon, I wanted to serve. And so I joined the Naval Reserves with an intent of being an academic doctor and serving as a reservist. And then, like so many people,
we're going to come back to that, because I got some specific questions about being the doctor and the role that you had. But Brian, you were in ROTC at Vanderbilt, right? Was
Right.
that what it had been a dream of yours all along to go into the Navy or something? What was the plan there?
No, so my story is a little different. So I remember my father, I was looking at, we did the college tour where you go to school, and I had my mind set on Vanderbilt, and my dad said, well, how are you going to pay for that? And I said, well, I'm not paying for that. You're paying for that. He's like,
yeah, Vanderbilt's not a cheap school. Were you
said,
out
I'll
of
pay
state
for 4
too, right?
years at Kansas State University, or I'll pay for 1 year at Vanderbilt. That's about how the money works out. So you want to go to Vanderbilt, you figure out how to pay for those other 3 years. I'm senior in high school, and I'm thinking, I got to get busy. So I got busy, and I found out about this Navy ROTC scholarship program, and I applied for Air Force and for Navy scholarships. And the Navy scholarship, won the Navy scholarship, 3-year scholarship. So it worked out. Dad paid for 1 year, and I paid for 3.
I wish I had known you before my son went to college, because I tried to convince him. I said, you want to go in and you want to fly. Why don't you ask him for a scholarship?
I love the program. I'm a big advocate of the program, and here's why.
I'd have been a big advocate too, to save me some money.
Yeah, in the years since, it was expensive when I went to school, but in the years since, the college tuition prices have outpaced inflation, by multiple percentage points.
Right.
So now, we have a country of young people who are saddled with debt that they may or may never pay off. Mm-hmm. And why start your career with this huge 6-figure burden of debt hanging over you? Talk about stress and anxiety. When you can serve your country, you can get these scholarships, you graduate gainfully employed in a leadership position with responsibility that you will not have in the civilian sector. I mean, here I am, 22 years old, and they're putting me on a $6 billion submarine, handing me the keys to the reactor.
And if you were like me, you had more folding money in your pocket when you were a second lieutenant or an ensign than you probably have now.
Exactly.
So
yeah, it's a great program. Your education is paid for. You get a job right out of school with a lot of responsibility, and you have no debt. So I love the ROTC
You came
program.
into the nuclear Navy, though, after Rickover had probably retired and passed away. But
Well, Rickover passed the keys to Admiral McKee.
Did you get a one-on-one interview as part of the onboarding and become an officer in the nuclear Navy?
I did. Yeah, I had to sit there, and I will never forget Admiral McKee. He had my file open on his desk, and keep in mind, I was a psychology major. They got a lot of engineers here, and I was one of the few yahoos that came in with a soft degree. So he's got my file open. He's looking at it. And I'll never forget, he looks up at me and he says, the first thing out of his mouth, he says, "What the F business do you have coming into my office saying you want to be part of my nuclear Navy?" And I remember that's not what I thought how my interview would open. But, we talk about in writing, sometimes we'll put in there time slowed for the character, literally that's what happened for me. Time slowed down. I remember in my brain, I'm thinking, what do I do? How do I get out of this jam? And I remember my brain said, well, you got to come back at this guy, because if you don't, he'll see you as weak and you're never going to have another chance at this. So I said to him, well, you need me. And he looked at me like, I don't need you. Why would I need you? I said, you need me because I think differently than everybody else out there in the hall. So you might have 90, engineers applying for this position, and maybe you have a submarine full of engineers, but you don't have anybody with a psychology perspective who might look at the problem differently. And as I'm saying this, I'm thinking, oh, this is a bunch of BS. He's not going to buy any of this. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. But I just kept to it, and it did work. And I think, for me, that was a very, very important lesson that I learned. And thankfully, I did the right thing early in my career, which is, when people want to tell you no, and they want to see if you're willing to stand up to them. And if you don't believe in yourself and you don't say, I can do this, why are they going to give you a chance? So I think it was my conviction that got me into the program, not my grades.
Jeff, I was thinking he was going to come back and say, you know what, after 75 days underwater on a submarine, you're going to need somebody in there that, that can give some psychology to those people so they don't go crazy. Anyway, hey, Jeff, you served, you've been cagey about it, with East Coast SEAL teams as a trauma surgeon, basically, right? Have I got it generally right?
That's generally right. Yeah.
What can you share about that experience? Without disclosing the inner workings of the dev group at Little Creek.
Yeah. So, in 2005, I had deployed with the Marines, and while I was downrange, I got invited to participate in a specific operation that was on the spookier side, and ran into some people from my past, not the military side, but the other side, and was able to support this thing. And when I got back from that, I'll never forget getting this phone call saying, "Hey, do you remember that stuff we talked about on the roof in Rutba that you said you could support, blah, blah, blah?" And I was like, "Yeah, I remember that. You think you could really do that?" I was like, "Yeah, I think I could really do that." And the friend of mine said, "Well, these guys want to meet you. Let's meet at Hot Tuna's bar in Virginia Beach." And I was like,
famous watering hole right there. All right.
Right. So, it was that sort of weird. And, there's a part of me like, I'm being punked, like, this isn't real. But anyway, so I met with these guys, and they had a need. The special operations, especially the JSOC forces, were taking on a huge burden of responsibility for how these wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were conducted at that time. It was all high value target missions. It was all small, teams of 4 or 5 guys to go get one dude or the next guy in the chain. And what they didn't have was the ability to medically support that outside of the Iraq and Afghanistan theaters. And so they were looking, can we develop a very small footprint package that can go on these operations so that if something bad were to happen, we can keep a guy going for a day or two, in a denied area where getting out ahead of schedule is not always an easy thing. And so that was what I was challenged to do. And that's probably about the extent of which we can discuss.
This is a necessity is the mother of invention. So much smart stuff comes out of that community because they've got to figure out stuff and get solutions, quickly.
Yeah. And they're the smartest people I've ever met outside of Brian and his psychology, nuclear engineer background. But they're all brilliant. You know, the lowest enlisted guy in those teams could easily have gone to Harvard or Dartmouth or anywhere else. But they're amazing people, and they think outside the box. And you know, it's like anything else in life. They come, you say, "Can you do this?" And you go, like Brian was saying, "Well, hell yeah, I can." And then they go, "Okay, let's do it." And you're like, "Man, I hope I hope I can."
You're finding a way. You know, I want to jump to this. You know, Tom Clancy, right, was never in the military. He did this enormous amount of research, you know, to write his books. I want to know, you know, you guys obviously can draw on some firsthand experience, but what's the research process that you are also going through to make all of this stuff believable so it passes the sniff test with your buddies, you know, that you served with?
I mean, I think there's two stages to the experience and background that helps us. One is, like you say, you can draw on personal experiences and relationships and things you've literally seen and done and adapt them to a story. But the other thing is those relationships have several degrees of separation from you, and there's always a guy between the two of us, someone that we can call and say, "Hey, do you know anyone from this community that we could chat with and run this by?" And so it becomes very relational, the research for us, perhaps more so than someone that hadn't served. And I will tell you that it's a great time to be a thriller reader, because we're not the only ones out there. Like Don Bentley and Josh Hood, and I mean, you know, Mark Cameron with his background as a U.S. Marshal. There's so many people who have been there and done that are writing in the space now. It's just a great time to be able to devour these books written by people who have a little bit.
I mean, tons of appetite for your content too. I mean, it can be a Netflix series, you know. I mean, this is not, you know, it doesn't have to necessarily go on the big screen, but gosh, just fascinating. So Brian, let me ask the business side of this question. You know, what is the business of being a writer? And do you guys think your military experience has helped you be successful in the business side of being a writer?
Yeah, I think a lot of aspiring authors go into pursuing a career in writing thinking that my job is just to write this book and I'm going to turn it into the publisher and they're going to do the rest. And that sure would be nice, but that's not the way that it works anymore. And I don't know if it was ever the way it worked. I mean, I think in the past, maybe when authors were putting out one book a year and there was a smaller pool of published authors, you know, a little bit less media and outlets and stuff, there was a lot more weight put on what the publishers do. Today, it's very, very competitive, fragmented landscape. And the publishers just aren't capable of really doing all the things that you need them to do to make your career successful. You have to build your own platform, and being an author is a small business. And Jeff and I talk about this all the time. We approach this as a business. And so there's marketing and publicity that we have to do. There's accounting, there's strategy, and there's networking. And you can't leave those things up to other people to do. And if you don't, they're never going to know your interest or do them with the amount of effort and intention that you need them to do to be successful.
This is fascinating stuff, and time flies by when I get on these conversations, particularly with a couple of guys that are yinging and yanging like the two of you are. You guys have got, you know, to kind of wrap this thing up, you guys have got a lot on your plate over the next 12 months. Tell everybody what's coming, and then tell everybody how they can follow you. And of course, we're going to put links to all of this on the show notes. But, you know, what have you guys got coming up in the next year? We got December 7th, Rogue Asset hitting the shelves, right? I strongly recommend y'all get it. Presidential Agent, you know, a couple of slick guys in there. Got the Marine Raider in there and bringing the guy out of retirement, folks. That's just a little teaser for you. Interesting stuff. And of course, it starts off with a bang. So very interesting book title. I'll tease you with that. But what else have you guys got coming in the pipeline? I know you've got some other things that are coming out next year, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, so like you had mentioned, we talked about Dark Intercept. You can see it in my background here. That's book 1 in the Shepherd series, but book 2, Dark Angel, comes out in April. So we're very excited about that. Sons of Valor 2 comes out in June. That's the second installment in the Tier 1 spinoff, which features some of our fan favorites from the main Tier 1 series. So Chunk Redman is the lead character in that. You can see that lead book and Jeff's background right there.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third book in the Shepherd series, Dark Fall, comes out in October of next year. So we keep them coming fast and furious, and you'll be able
y'all
to
are a
binge.
machine. You're a machine.
And I'll say two things we want to add because we're getting so much email about this. The Tier 1 series is not over. And a year from right now, next winter, book 7, the 7th installment in the Tier 1 series is going to come to the shelves. It's called Dempsey. It's going to answer a lot of questions that we're getting in our emails. So be patient. Those questions are going to be answered in the book coming out next year. And then shortly after that, we have a new techno thriller series that's going to be launched with a book called Sandbox from Blackstone that we're super, super excited about. So
I think this is going to be fun. It's going to be fun to follow you guys. You guys have a website. It's
www.andrews-wilson.com. We have all the books and everything. Also, there's a newsletter you can sign up for. In addition to getting some early information on releases, we have some special giveaways and swag and hats and stuff that we give to our subscribers. So join us at andrews-wilson.com, and everything you need to know is there.
Gosh, this is great. Folks, look forward to, Pearl Harbor Day. I guess it's the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor is, next week, and your book's hitting the stands on that day. Absolutely. Good timing.
Yeah. Go
Good timing. Hey, thanks so much. Listen, folks, you've been listening to the Spotlight on the Veteran Crowd Network. Our guests have been Brian Andrews and Jeff Wilson, authors of multiple of books, including Rogue Asset, which will be available on December the 7th. Hey, guys, thank you for stepping into the Spotlight. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so much fun. Thanks for having us, Bob.
You've been listening to the Spotlight on the Veteran Crowd Network. We're coming to you now once a week on Fridays and bringing veterans like Jeff and Brian into your homes. Guys, I'm going to throw out an Army Bravo Zulu to you guys. And since this thing is going to be publishing on the day before the Army-Navy game, I got a son in the Navy. I'm in the Army. I'm just going to have to say, go Army, beat Navy.
No.
Come on, Bob.
Go Navy.
Go Navy, yeah.
Hey. All right.
Your son,
hey
we have your son's back. Hoo-yah.
There you go. All right. Great to have you guys on, folks. Again, Bravo Zulu to the two of you folks, and that's a wrap.
Thank you for listening to Spotlight by Veteran Crowd. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information and uploads, please visit our website at VeteranCrowdNetwork.com. We'll see you next time.